All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to StealthyHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.
You're listening to the Northern Hunter Podcast, home of all things hunting, fishing, and outdoors in Alaska. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is James Payne.
And I'm Mariah Humphreys.
And Dalton will not be joining us this week, or possibly next week. I think he's going to be out of town. He is headed to guide a hunt out in the middle of nowhere, Alaska. Yeah. So, basically, by the time this episode comes out, he'll be out in the sticks, sleeping in tents and chasing big moose. So we wish him the best. Hopefully all of you guys do too. And Mo and I are going to tackle an additional part to the fall season that we all think is very important, which is fall bear.
Interior fall bears.
Interior fall bears, specifically the interior. Yeah. We talk a lot about predator management and stuff like that, and that is an aspect of bear hunting. It's a very important aspect of bear hunting, but there's other aspects we're going to talk about today. So hang tight for that. Before we get into that, if you have any questions about that or moose season, or we're coming into the winter season here soon, definitely give us a shout on our social medias. We have the links for those in the show notes. You can click those and find us anywhere we are available on social media. If you go to the website, thenorthernhunter.com, we've got a nice, what'd you say that was? Matte? Contact button. Is it? I called it shiny in the other episode.
Well, I mean, it's not. It depends on the screen, actually. Like if the screen is gloss,
there you go. See,
but then it might look somewhat glossy.
So mine's a little glossy. So I'm going to say it's a shiny contact button. Okay, so you can hit us there.
It's white.
We'll give. Just got to put in a little bit of information, and then you can get us a message there. We've also got a shop page there if you'd like to support what we're doing here. We got hats, hoodies, t-shirts. Mo's wearing both a Northern Hunter hoodie and a hat right now. Looks real snazzy.
Oh, yeah. And I could lie and say I'm wearing a t-shirt underneath, but I'm not.
Right. The other easiest way to support what we're doing is if you like the show on whatever platform you're listening to it on, subscribe to it, share it with your friends, and leave us a rating. That all really helps us reach more people, get the messages and the information out to the people that need it. So if you know somebody that's coming up for a hunt or that lives in Alaska and could use the information, definitely let them know about the show. And if you'd like to support us while you're on your adventure.
On your hunt. I get to say it.
There you go.
Got a nice list of sponsors and partners now. Got Hammer, Yukon River Knives, 60-inch Club, Stealthy Hunter, and they all use the Northern Hunter discount code. That is the Northern Hunter. No caps, no space. And then we've got Weatherby, which does not have a discount code, but they make some great rifles.
Fantastic rifles.
And if you buy one of those, give them a call and let them know we sent you. And then we also have Batum 907, which the promo code is TNHP.
It's the acronym for the show.
Yep. The Northern Hunter Podcast is what that stands for. And they have great scent lures right now. You can go down there, and I'm sure there'll still be some moose season open somewhere when this comes out. Maybe a little bit in a few places. And they have some great legal for Alaska scent lures that you can use for moose, but also you could stock up on your bear bait lures for next year if you wanted to.
Absolutely.
Which isn't a bad idea. You can get them quicker that way than when you remember right before the season.
Yeah, she gets pretty slammed sometimes right before. She actually just posted a video, and I think I shared it on the story for the Instagram, but and it shows a bunch of different moose that people took using her lures. It's phenomenal stuff. So definitely give that a try. And if you're going to dive into trapping this year, she's got some great stuff for that too.
I will say, if you haven't checked out 60-inch Club yet, I know we've got a lot of listeners. I've looked at a lot of the other stuff. If you go to our website, there's a banner on the main page now, or you can go to the partners page, and they'll link to their website. And they have some awesome game bags, not just for moose. They've got for smaller, they've got like a deer size set and an elk size set,
elk and caribou,
and a couple things about their game bags is they've got handles on them and tough drawstrings, so you can pick them up from both sides, like even with a bunch of weight in them. But you go buy like a lot of game bag sets. Now they are carried now in like by Sportsman's and locally and stuff like that. But if you go to Sportsman's and you go to buy a game bag set and it's not theirs, say for moose, it's going to have 4 game bags in it.
Right.
Is that enough?
Nope.
No, that's enough for 4 quarters.
You are seriously consolidating at that point.
So I used to always have those 4 quarter bags like that set, and then I would have a small set of, say, even some sheep bags or something that was small, light but tough, that I could throw burger in, and depending on if you strip all your rib meat or if you cut your ribs, right?
The ribs
I'd have
fit
bigger
in those
bags.
nicely.
I would always have extra game bags, and I never had a concise package. I don't remember how many are in there, but there's at least 6 or 7.
There's
in one.
Yeah, so it comes with 4 quarter bags. Man, I should really know this. But I think it has two burger size bags.
Okay.
And then it's at least 7,
right?
Maybe even 8 bags in there. But it's an insane amount.
It's a very nice.
It's an appropriate amount for a moose.
And they're tough, strong. You can wash them, reuse them every year.
The thing I like the most about them, in addition to the handle, they're very tough, like you said.
And they're compact.
But they're compact. They're breathable. So if you keep your meat, the addition, we've talked about like the cheesecloth game bags before, and how they just kind of tear on things and they're not really great. They don't exactly keep the bugs out when you want them to. But these ones do. And the alternative to the cheesecloths back in the day was always the canvas bags. The big, tough, thick canvas bags. But those ones don't breathe that well. And
they're also very big and heavy.
Very big and heavy, yeah. So these ones are compact. They're lightweight, relatively speaking.
Right.
They're as tough as you could ever want them to be. They've got handles on them. But when you feel them, when you actually like open the bags up, they don't feel that much more heavy or cumbersome than a cheesecloth bag does.
Right.
They're very, whatever material they're made of and the design of them, they're very purpose driven in that, and I love it. The other cool thing about them is that the carry case that they come in doubles as a camp organizer. That's part of the design of the carry case.
Okay.
So the reason it has kind of a mesh back there and everything like that is they designed it. So when you show up to camp and you're unpacking everything and you got your game bags kind of tucked into your pack there, you can use that as a camp organizer.
I just keep all the game bags in it and shove the whole thing in my pack.
I do too at the moment. Yeah, that's where it lives right now. But
I can see that. I like that idea, especially if you keep your game bag separated out a little bit. I will say there's one thing I like cheesecloth for, and I still have a couple I keep with some of my. And that is, I keep the small ones because then when I pull the heart and the heart and the liver and stuff out,
edible organs, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can separate the heart and the liver, makes it easier to find, keeps it separated from all the meat, both the heart and the liver. I just like having those things separated without having to have a completely separate bag for them.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely go check him out. The other cool thing is if you order them online and you go through there, then you get the discount code.
That's right.
Use discount code The Northern Hunter. You can get them at a discount cheaper than you'd be able to buy them in the store. But if you're in a bind and you're about to leave on your hunt in a day or two, you can find them locally, at least if you're in Alaska. So, and again, those are all great local companies. They make great stuff. Shopping with them and using the discount code supports them, helps support us, and we definitely appreciate it. So we are 2 weeks into moose season now.
Yeah.
Not quite a full 2 weeks, but 2 weekends, I'll say that.
Right.
So you got out, did a little bit. How'd your weekend go, Mo?
I saw moose 3 of the 4 nights I've hunted since the last time we recorded.
Yeah.
Once it was actually within range, but it was a count of calf. But I got to watch them for like an hour.
Can't shoot them.
No, you can't. I got to watch them feed for about an hour. That was nice. Been doing lots of glass and a little bit of reading.
Yeah.
Enjoying the outdoors, wishing I wasn't just wasting time and money, but still enjoying the outdoors. I know it's not a waste, but there's sometimes when you drive somewhere after work and every night, and it just starts to feel
right. I know.
You know,
but that's majority of the time out there. I mean,
that's what a lot of it is.
You're not shooting every night,
especially for moose, unless you've got a really good spot.
Yeah,
and you got to dedicate time to it. You know, and I say that, but I know guys who come to the interior and camp from a different part of the state, and they fly and they buy groceries, and like the amount of money I spend to drive somewhere and even run a wheeler out is nothing compared to the amount of money they've spent to come up here. Right. Yeah. And I work very hard to not mess up their hunt.
Yeah, absolutely. No, yeah, that's part of, having jobs and having responsibilities and things like that, is you can't always get out and dedicate the 10 days you'd like to spend out in the woods for moose, which is the best way, honestly, if you're going to dedicate some time to moose, taking a lot of time off and being able to get farther away from civilization and everything and out to where the moose are a little bit more prominent, things like that. Hunting around town, it's okay, but the success rates are lower because there's so much competition, a lot of pressure.
Well, the best way to get around it is just to hunt as much as you can, and if you find a spot where there's moose, stick with it.
Yeah, right? It's a game of time at that point, putting your time in. So I did pretty much the same thing. I've been going out in the evening times and stuff like that recently. Through the weekend, I had quite a few other things going on, but still made time to get out there for a full day. The wife and I woke up at like 4 a.m. one day and drove out somewhere, and we went out. We did see a moose, but I have no idea what it was because we were sneaking in through this meadow, trying to get to where we were going to sit. And we heard one up ahead of us. So it was so thick in there, though. I mean, we've talked about that before. These moose love to live in thick country. And so it started walking down into the timbers. And by the time we got around the thickness, I could only see it from basically the front shoulders back. So it was probably only like, 50 yards away, maybe. So easy shot, but I don't want to risk it if you can't see the headgear.
I had a similar situation one time. I was hunting in a more mountainous area. There's this hillside, and from one side of the valley or down in the valley, it looks like one hillside across, but you get up there and there's a bowl that kind of drops down before it goes up to the higher elevations. So you get in that bowl and you can kind of just ride back and forth and glass that hillside. You're just slowly looking up. It rides slowly looking up, and as I've said before, if you're a ways away from moose, they don't seem to mind the wheeler running through the area. They're
especially
used to it.
In wide open country like
that.
Right. Yeah.
And but I had seen one in an area, so I had driven, over that direction, but quite a ways away. I parked the wheeler and got off and hiked up into the trees into this little meadow kind of area, and it was just kind of still hunting. Still hunting. The name is kind of
misleading.
Yeah. Still hunting doesn't mean you're sitting still. It can be used to describe like tree stand hunting or something like that, but it can also be used, it's primarily used to describe like a walking hunt, but a very slow walking hunt. You take a step or two or three or 6, and then you stop and you listen and you don't make noise, because that's how an animal moves through the woods.
Yep.
And you can walk right up on a lot of moose or anything that way, which I have. But so I still hunted through that area where I saw that bull. And I don't think it was the same bull, but I got to a spot where all of a sudden I come around a tree and there's a bull moose standing 100 yards away from me. And he's looking at me, but one antler is behind a tree. And, off of one antler, I should be able to tell how big he was, but I wasn't willing to take the risk.
Right.
I at the time didn't have a lot of experience judging moose, and it just wasn't, and I didn't have much time to look at him either. He didn't stand there very long. So yeah, there was whole moose except for one antler's behind a tree, and I can't see it, and I'm just like, I don't know.
Yep.
I was looking more for the full picture to kind of gauge it.
Exactly.
But
which is it's always better to be safe. I've had that happen to me multiple times where you just can't see the whole moose, especially hunting in brushy country.
Right.
They're big animals, and sometimes there's just a bush in between you and their heads. So it kind of sucks when that happens, but it is what it is. That's hunting. We pushed through the rest of the day, had a great day out there. We managed to harvest some chaga off one of the trees, which was awesome. That's for anybody that doesn't know, that's a fungi that grows on birch trees up here in Alaska, and it makes really good tea. It's really good for you. Has a lot of nutrients and whatnot in it. My wife is a lot better at explaining all that, but we try to harvest that whenever we can. It's usually grows pretty high up on the trees, so it's hard to get to. But
On the birch trees, right?
yeah, on the birch trees, paper birch. So we found some that we could access, get to from the ground. So it was a good time. We still had a great day out there, but I've got a trip planned for this weekend. I'm going to try to get a little farther out of town and see what happens. So by the time we record next week's episodes, I should have a report from that. So
yeah,
hopefully.
Well, hopefully I've killed a moose. I've got a few more nights that I can go sit.
There you go.
With the rifle season, and I fully plan on doing that.
Yep. And I think, let me check my dates here. I'm pretty sure by the time this one comes out, local season will be closed.
For rifle, yes.
For rifle. So bow will still be open till the 30th around the Fairbanks management area, but rifle season will be closed in 20B.
Yeah.
So hopefully all of you guys that have been out there hunting were successful, had a good season. We wish you all the best luck. If you weren't successful, there's always other places you can go that are open later, or you can grab up your bow and try to go walk around. So, but I want to talk about an article I read a little bit earlier this week. Okay. Kind of something crazy you might see when you're out in the woods. I've never seen it. I've never even heard of this. But this is an article. It was published yesterday, actually, on Outdoor Life. So, big company. Pretty sure everybody's heard of them.
Yep.
But it's titled, let's see here, Rare Trail Cam Footage Shows Brown Bear and Wolf Hunting Together.
Question mark.
Yeah. So the video, for anybody, we'll throw up a link in the show notes for this or something like that. We've got to get better about doing that. But the video from this trail cam, it was taken by an ADFG trail cam that they set these up all over the place, trying to do studies on wildlife, see how animals are behaving, maybe get some counts in or something like that. And man, it is the craziest thing in the world. So this cow and calf are walking down a game trail. And then out of nowhere to the left of the screen, this brown bear starts attacking. And naturally, the cow turns to the brown bear and starts, throwing some jabs, a couple left rights, the old 1-2, and seems to lose the battle fairly quickly. But suddenly, from the side, this wolf jumps around the cow and starts chasing her calf down, leading people to believe that these predators of different species may have been working together.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it might have just been one real big coincidence, but
I tend to lean towards that myself.
Yeah. I don't know. I've never heard of bears and wolves working together. Typically, most of the videos you see of them together are them fighting. Yeah, right. Fighting over a kill or over a carcass of some sort, and it'd be interesting. I'm excited to read more about this. Maybe see what develops if they do any kind of an in-depth study into it. But I saw that and I thought it was super awesome. I don't know how much have you seen them together in the woods at all, if at all?
I don't know if I've ever seen them together in any way interacting or anything like that.
Yeah, they tend to kind of stay away from each other.
I've never had any wolves hit my bait. I've heard of them doing that, but I haven't had them hit my bait personally. Typically, I don't see. I've seen them in the same areas, just not the same time of year.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of been my experience as well. Is they'll roll through. I mean, if you just keep an eye out for them. I mean, and you can see them in relatively close to the same area. If you're hunting an area where you can see a long ways, but never like right next to each other. At least not in the interior. Well, and I think this was down south somewhere. This was not in the interior. So,
I think a lot of
southeastern Alaska.
With the fact that wolves a lot of times roam in packs. A brown bear or grizzly bear or black bear, for that matter, doesn't stand a chance against a pack of wolves.
Yeah.
Whereas if you've got
he'll put up a good fight, but he's going to lose.
If you've got a lone wolf, he might be a lot more likely to, obviously in this case, didn't care that he was there. It appeared.
Right. Well, and that's that's what I'm curious. It's amazing they even caught this on game trail,
right?
Or on a game trail camera. Sorry, let me finish that statement. Because talk about good camera placement. I mean, man, that's like a whole
blind block.
Right. Like to have that exact attack. I mean, if it had happened 10 feet sooner, it would have been off the screen. 10 feet later, it would have been off the screen. But they just caught this perfect. It almost looks staged, to be honest with you. Like it really does. But apparently not. So this is for anybody that wants to watch that video, go check it out. It's I got a good I don't know, I enjoyed it. I think it's a cool video. Nature's a really, really crazy thing.
Yeah.
It really can be. But that also is a good point of why it's important to manage these populations, bears and wolves and things like that. Up here in Alaska, there's plenty of them. And apparently enough that they're starting to work together. So
apparently so. Well, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and as we would say, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then and then also the other thing is like they may not have noticed each other until they were in on the stalk.
Right. Just both caught the same scent, maybe took the same approach.
Right, and got up close and just, didn't have time to deal with that issue at the moment.
Yeah.
Right? Let's kill the game and then we can fight over it.
Right. Exactly. Well, and then that then begs the question, was it a lone wolf?
It appeared to be so.
It appeared in the video, but the video is only 10 seconds long.
I think if it was a pack of wolves, you would have seen a lot more than one jumping in at that last moment.
Right. All interesting stuff. So
very much.
Let's take a quick break. We're going to dive into some bear hunting.
Alrighty.
All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to StealthyHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.
All right, so we're going to get into bear hunting here. That is something that in Alaska specifically is not always a fall time event.
No, not at all.
With black bear, a lot of the times there's areas of the state where there's no close season at all.
Most of the state.
Yeah, for grizzlies, it does close down for a portion in most of the state. There's one unit, I believe, that it does not, and it's open season year round. But for a lot of the season, or a lot of the areas of the state, you want to make sure, look in the regs, make sure you're within you're within season. Sometimes it's August, sometimes it's September,
and sometimes it's a little after September, which
depending on where you're at,
has gotten some people in trouble.
Yeah,
because they assumed.
Right, as most people would, because that's the time that they're active, which is kind of what we're going to talk about. So not only knowing the regs, but also understanding the animal you're pursuing is a big thing. That's a big thing no matter what you're going after. And we've talked a lot about different styles of hunting bears. We've talked about different times of hunting bears. For anybody that's not super familiar with the activity levels of bears, depending on what time of year you're headed out, there is varying success rates because they alter their behaviors based on the food available, based on how nutrient the food that they're getting is, how close to either exiting hibernation or entering hibernation is. And all of that is something to take into consideration when you're looking at going after bear. That's why, typically speaking, especially for grizzlies and things like that, it's usually spring or fall because that's when they're the most active. Same with black bears, pretty much everywhere except for super, super high density areas in the state. Now, I read a pretty interesting article that explained this very well, actually. I think they did a really good job with it, but it was written by the North American Bear Center.
Okay.
So I kind of figured in the spirit of understanding animals and their activity cycles, we could read through this and kind of compare to how it works in Alaska.
Alrighty.
Let's look here. So, for everybody that doesn't know, bears hibernate. in the wintertime.
Yes, they
They're
do.
gone. You don't have to worry about them for the most part. And
You can't hunt them really either.
Yeah.
Unless they get real hungry.
Unless they get real hungry. They do pop out, and that's kind of one thing. So this starts off, the article's list is named the 5 stages of activity and hibernation. The 5 stages that they list here is hibernation, walking hibernation, normal activity, hyperphagia, and fall transition. And I don't know that I would have come up with 5 different areas, but that it seems to fit when they explain it later on in the article. So stage 1 is hibernation. They start with the sleep.
Mm-hmm.
For everybody that doesn't know, bears don't actually sleep all winter. They are very lethargic. They sleep a lot, but they're not 100% knocked out 100% of the time. It says here under stage 1 with hibernation, they reduce oxygen consumption and metabolic rate to as little as 25% of the summer rates and breathe only once per 15 to 45 seconds.
Wow.
That's nuts. Heart rate can drop periodically to 8 to 21 beats per minute. The blood flow and blood flow to skeletal muscle, particularly the legs, can be reduced by 45% or more. So they're very, very shut down. It's a really interesting development that these bears have done to kind of cope with the winters.
Bears,
but when does
frogs?
Yeah, frogs are weird ones too. But when is that most likely to occur here in Alaska? Well, typically speaking, your hibernation period is going to be, what would you say, late October, early November.
It can depend a lot on the weather.
I was going to say it's very subjective to the weather, but late October to early November is when they're going to start bedding down. There's going to be some hanging around into late November that are kind of, maybe they didn't get enough food or something like that. They don't want to go to bed yet, but typically speaking, majority of them are going to start disappearing around that time. And they'll be asleep, or at least in the dens, until roughly April. So April's when everything starts waking up. That's when the baiting season kicks off. And that's kind of bringing into the next phase of the walking hibernation. We'll get this into when the bears are actually accessible. Let me get back into the article here. So stage 2, walking hibernation. It's a 2 to 3 week period following the exit of the dens when their metabolic processes adjust to a normal summer levels. During walking hibernation, bears voluntarily eat and drink less, and then they will later during normal activity. They also excrete less urine, nitrogen, calcium, phosphorus, and magnesium. This is the time of year when most people are out, I would say, spot and stalking spring bear. You know, they're a little bit more careless because they're hungry, they're malnourished, they're just out there basically getting into whatever food they can find. Plucking some grass. They're out. You find them out in fields early in the year before all the snow's out. And this is kind of where we in the interior get a little out of luck with the beginning of the baiting season because they wake up a little later here. They go to bed a little sooner, depending on, again, snow conditions and whatnot. And so that's when you can start getting them out with the spot and stalk style. Now, around normal activity starts, that's the third point. Normal activity starts, I would say that's like your May into like early September, like before things start to get cold. That's when that's when the baiting season kicks up, is like May and June, you know, when they're starting to get out, they're eating a lot more. I think we talked about it in the earlier baiting podcast, but we talked about how bears need to blow the plug after hibernation, you know. So they're eating a lot of the roots and the grasses and the dandelions. Exactly. That's that walking hibernation phase. Once they've done that, now they're ready to eat lots of food, start getting back into their normal activity cycles.
Storing up some fat stores for next winter.
Exactly. Yeah. And they basically, with all that fur and the temperatures getting hotter and hotter throughout the summer, they get real stealthy. And they get they hide in the thicker brush and the shade. They're not as out in the open as they normally would be during the earlier and later parts of the year. So if you're trying to plan a specific bear hunt, that's not exactly the best time to go out there. Not to say you'll never run into one, but you'll have to,
Right.
it's more, you're not going to be spotting them from a ways off in open country and planning a stalk.
It's good to always have that black bear tag on you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because you might, you never know. Right.
Mm-hmm. Especially if you're in brushy areas around water.
And it may just
like
be
that.
a pest bear that
Mhm.
keeps getting into stuff and being trash, and you don't want to tag it, but in a lot of areas of the state we're allowed 5 black bears, so
Yeah, that's true.
or at least 3, and you always have the dreams of shooting 3 over a bait, but it never happens. And if it
Mhm.
does, you start to regret it, because it's not necessarily regret it, but I've heard of guys shooting at least 2 in one night and just saying that was just too much work.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot to haul out. They're not as big up here as they are in some areas of the country, but they're still 2
Still
for
a bear.
Yeah, still a bear, still a big animal. So it's definitely a lot to haul out. Goes into a little bit about how during this stage, bears will, if they have unlimited food source, there was a study done where they'll eat 5,000 to 6,000 calories per day. That seems like not that much for a bear, but and they'll just be basically drinking tons of water.
Mm-hmm.
They're essentially doing like what you said. They're just rebuilding those fat stores and things like that. Now, stage 4 is what we're talking about. Stage 4 is, so the scientific name here is hyperphagia. And this is the period where they're really getting active.
Mm-hmm.
The temperatures are starting to drop. They're realizing winter's coming back. This is the point in the year when you really want to be out there looking for them. They're going to get a lot more, I guess you could say, careless about being out in the open. They're going to be moving a lot more, roaming from place to place looking for food.
And the sun's not going to be baking them as much.
Right. Temperatures are dropping. They're more comfortable moving around.
Mm-hmm.
They're not super hot. So really that phase, I would say, starts in September. When the temperatures start to get down, that's when the bears
maybe not this year, but
right. Well, and again, a lot of these time specifics are subjective to the year. I mean, we've had years up here where it snowed several inches in the middle of September.
Oh, yeah.
And so that'll kickstart things a lot faster. We also had years where it's 80 degrees into September.
Right.
That'll push things back a little bit.
It snowed at the beginning of September, and then it was 80 degrees again at the end.
Right. Yeah. Same year.
Right.
Yeah. And so a lot of that, when you're going out on one of these hunts, you really want to be keeping an eye on all of that, making sure that you're within what that year is doing. But realistically, your best chance of finding a grizz or black bear in the fall is going to be that September through October into early November is pretty late. I wouldn't plan a hunt unless you just have a bunch of free time for early November. If you're going after grizzlies, but
it's a good time to scout around, especially if there's not a lot of snow yet. You can ride into an area.
Yeah.
Use bears as your excuse.
Yeah.
Or use wolves. That's a good time to go look for wolves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, wolves. And that's another great thing to, basically chase after the ungulate seasons.
Right. At the same time, as I like to do. I like to go in an area looking for both.
Yep. Because the other thing that you'll run into later in the season there is what they call here in the article the fall transition. The fall transition is basically when they're getting ready to go to sleep. They've already built up their fat stores.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to kind of revert back to that kind of sluggish. They're slowing down their metabolism. They're eating less. They're drinking a lot of water, trying to flush out their digestive system before they go into the dens. But they're not going to be moving around a lot. So if you wait too late in the year, there might still be bears around, but they're not going to be moving around and as active.
The good thing about those times, though, and right before that, there's usually about a week. It can be longer depending on what the temperatures are doing and stuff. But the right period of time, depending on where you're at in the state, towards middle to end of October, maybe beginning, and then maybe beginning of November, depending on what the weather's doing. That's when they start to move up higher towards their dens.
Right.
So they're a lot easier to do a spot and stock.
Yeah.
Whereas, earlier in the fall, you can, and they'll be out and about, but they're not going to be as easy to spot necessarily.
Yeah. And because they're less active, they're not going to be moving around quite as much. So if you do spot one, chances are they're going to be at least in that general vicinity for a while.
They get out feeding on those berries and grasses again.
Right. Exactly. So now the different styles, a lot of people will use just a hunt of opportunity. So while they're out either caribou hunting or moose hunting during the later parts of August into September. Bears are very active during that September period. You're going to see a lot of them hanging around those herds, whether it's caribou herds or just heavy moose populated areas. A lot of people will, if they are going to try and kill a grizzly bear, they'll try to do it during their moose hunt. And that's a great strategy. And we clearly here support that. We've talked about that a lot on the show. If you see wolves in the area, even, how shooting a wolf during your moose hunt isn't going to scare the moose away. That's not going to flush all the moose out of that valley or out of that area that you're in. If anything, it'll make it better.
Yes.
And the same pretty much goes for bears. If you see a bear lurking around that area, that's going to be chasing the moose. It's going to be trying to get the cows and whatnot while they're in a more vulnerable state. And it's just going to be, if you see a bear while you're moose hunting, definitely chase that thing. But I would say if you're wanting to go on a dedicated bear hunt, like a fall bear hunt, whether it's for black bear or grizzlies, my recommendation would be to plan that after moose season.
Yep.
So looking at whatever zone and unit you're trying to hunt in, the biggest reason for that is simply lack of pressure. If you're out there looking for bears during moose season, well, everybody else is out there looking for moose. You're going to have a lot more wheelers in the woods. You're going to have a lot more people pushing things, pushing animals around and causing some chaos out there, especially in some of the more easy to access areas. If you wait till after caribou, moose, and all that is closed, most of those people are going to be back home.
Right.
And you're going to be out there with a lot less pressure, a lot less noise, and you're going to get to see these bears when they're a lot more carefree, I guess. They're not hearing things all around them. They're not spooked. They're not, on hyper alert. They're trying to fill their bellies before winter.
Right.
And that's really, if you're trying to dedicate a time to that, that's what I would say.
Yeah, I usually like to go do that. And a lot of times, you moose hunt, right? And, moose season in a lot of the state, especially the easy access areas, is the 15th is when it ends. And some of it's the 20th, some of it's the 25th. And some of that you can motorized access.
Yeah.
And just a little bit of foreshadowing. A little bit of foreshadowing. Next episode, we're going to be talking about motorized access and them mapping on that stuff. Anyhow, so after that, after the primary moose season when everybody's out, right? End of September, beginning of October, that's when I like to go out the first time. Because a lot of times you're going to go out that time and it may be just right, but it may be a little early before they're starting to move up. Because when they're starting to move up is the ideal time.
Exactly.
You may see a lot of sign, but have harder time seeing bears.
Yep.
And what I found is when I go somewhere moose hunting and there's a dozen or two moose camps or wheelers in an area, a week later, there's nobody after moose season.
Right.
Except on the weekends, you'll have some joyriders.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but they're used to that. That happens all year long.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother them so much. There's not gunshots going off everywhere. There's not camps and fires and scent everywhere. It's all had some time to drift away.
Yeah.
Maybe some rain or some snow to cover it up.
Yep.
And that first snow for tracking is
right.
Awesome.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite times to be out there too. And point in case, I was talking earlier in the show about having a moose hunt plan for this weekend. I'm going to be going out for a little while. And don't get me wrong, I want to be looking for bears.
Right.
I'm going to be looking for any opportunity I can. But if I come home and I haven't gotten one, I have another trip planned, hopefully for the end of this month, if it works out, specifically for these.
Nice.
For grizzlies specifically, in a particular area where I feel like at least if I go take one out of the equation, it'll help the ungulate population in that area. So, which kind of brings us into the next portion of why you would want to hunt interior grizzlies or interior bears in general. For me, we've talked a lot on the show about predator management. That is a huge thing for me. I kind of have the feeling like if I'm going to be going out there and taking caribou and moose out of the populations, I should probably be doing my part to counter, the other predators in the area as well. Not only to, keep my own interest at heart where, I want to keep the moose populations high
Right.
so I can come back next year and feed my family with another moose.
Mm-hmm.
But also just kind of, we with conservation and everything, it's really important to keep that balance in play. And there's so many bears in this state. There's so many
There's a lot of
wolves in
bears,
this state. We're the opposite of everywhere else, basically. So, and so it just makes sense to me that if I'm going to pursue one, I should pursue the other.
Yeah.
But there's the reasons outside of that is, the hide is something that's a really beautiful thing to have. It's a really great kind of trophy memorabilia, you could say. The skull's the same way.
Skull's awesome.
Yeah, when you can go out in the woods and bring something like that home, that's really something else.
Yeah. So for me, the whole idea of making, taking out some other predators, since I am the apex predator in the wild, right?
Right.
As long as I
as long as you do your part,
right? As long as I'm smart about it. But there's that, and I think that is a crucial thing, especially since there's a lot of hunters. I'd say the majority of hunters in Alaska hunt two animals, moose and caribou, and they do it for meat, and I don't fault them for that. And you could argue the point. Well, what you're saying, you're taking a grizzly to save moose, but really you're saving way more moose than you're killing. But you're also
by
you're going to save the moose for those other hunters too.
Right.
It's a disproportionate, thing, and I think it is a big help to do that. More so than that, bears are a lot of fun.
Yeah,
there's a thrill from taking a bear that I don't think you're going to get from anything else. Granted, if you work really hard for any game animal, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But for me, I specifically a fall grizzly, I really want to eat one. I want to shoot one, and I want to try it. I've heard they're good. I was talking to some guys I know from Southeast the other day, and they were telling me, really, they said, because I told them that I've heard you can eat them, especially if they smell good when you're cutting them up.
Right.
And they were like, wow, now they're used to bears that have 3-foot tapeworms are pulling out, and
right.
just he said you cut them apart and it's just nasty.
Yeah.
You have no desire.
Right.
He goes,
well, and I've heard that the eating of grizzlies is kind of specific to the interior, which is what we're talking about today.
Right.
Because they don't have the salmon streams, they don't have the easy access to that kind of rotting food. They'll every once in a while get on like a caribou carcass or a moose carcass that's been laying there for a while. They'll bury it and come back. But, they're eating a lot of berries, they're eating a lot of roots, things like that. And I've heard the same thing. The way it was worded to me is you'll know you're going to eat that grizzly the second you walk up to it.
Yeah, I've heard it. I've heard the same thing, just saying when you cut it open, right?
Yeah.
I know when I'm in the woods and a moose is near, I can smell it, right? That smell right there doesn't necessarily make me want to eat it. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I've personally never tried grizzly meat yet. I would love to, and I think if I get one this spring or this fall, then I'm definitely going to try it, because, and again, it depends on how it smells when I kill it. If I end up getting one that's on top of a 3-week-old moose kill or something, then probably not, depending on what it's been eating.
Right.
But if I'm lucky enough to find one in a berry patch or something like that, or somewhere where I can tell it's been eating, better foods, more fresh foods, and it smells good, I'll try it, and we'll do a review of it here on the show. Maybe I'll even bring some home.
I've had grizzly, and I have had brown bear.
Have you? Okay, yeah.
I've had brown bear once, and I've had interior grizzly once.
Okay.
The brown bear, I have no desire to partake again. It was now it was a young one, and it was in the fall.
Okay.
So should be talking about better meat than spring for brown bear. It was a southeast. It was a small southeast brown bear. I didn't kill it. It was another guy that did it in the hunting group that we had. And I wasn't even. I don't think personally I was gonna cut up and cook any of the meat. I just heard a lot of stuff about it.
Yep.
But we decided to anyway. I can't remember what cut we took. If we took a piece of backstrap or whatever. But we cooked up some steak. They're the toughest steaks I think I've ever eaten.
Oh, really?
It wasn't because of how we cooked them. They were just very sinewy, very chewy.
Gotcha.
Not necessarily nasty, just really hard to eat.
Just not the texture you're used to. Yeah.
but we didn't have any desire in eating any more of that bear. But I did have some grizzly bear, and it was backstrap, and it was a young grizzly. I don't know how big it was exactly, but I know it was a younger one. I was a teenager with my dad, and we were hunting with a group of guys up north.
Okay.
And one of the guys had shot a grizzly before we got up there, and he brought in and cooked up some of the backstrap. And he didn't really have a practice feeding grizzlies, but he thought, hey, why not? Let's try it.
Yeah.
And so that was some amazing meat.
Was it
really, really good? And they were kind of wondering, like, man, I've had grizzlies that didn't taste good.
Mm-hmm.
It must just because it's a young one, right?
Right.
And they didn't think anything else of it, and I didn't at the time either. But now that I've heard more about this, like that was probably a lot more good meat on that bear too.
Probably, yeah.
Most grizzly in most areas, you're not required to harvest the meat.
You're not, and in all fairness, you're not hunting that animal for the meat either.
Right.
Not for its
necessarily.
meat.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, I've heard there were a lot of reports of that this spring of people eating grizzlies that they've taken off their baits.
I think it's becoming more popular.
Yeah, I'm really excited to try it. I think that's going to be great. But kind of along those same lines, the other great thing about killing specifically fall bears, and this may be more of a black bear thing. I've never heard of anybody doing this with grizzly fat, but rendering the fat down is great resource. I don't know if grizzly fat would have like any off-putting smells or anything like that, or be very much different. But I would assume if you can eat the meat, if it's one that you're willing to eat, then the fat's going to be fine in that instance.
It may be just like the meat where it depends on the bear and what he's been eating.
Right, exactly. And in that time of year, I mean, even black bears are that way. Black bears, if they've been eating nastier stuff, now black bears are less likely to be eating the same diet as a grizzly. But ultimately speaking, they're bears. They still are scavengers. Right. They're still scavengers. And if that's what they're able to get to feed themselves before they go to sleep, then that's what they're going to eat. But one thing about baiting bears in the spring, as much as I love it, is you're getting them right as they're coming out of their
not
dens.
a lot of fat.
Not a lot of fat. The one we pulled just the other year, we were able to, I think I put all the fat just right in my hand.
So usually they have more than that.
Yeah, it was a very, very lean bear. And a lot of it was just right along its back straps, basically. There was a little layer of fat there. And it did not have a lot. And so the benefit of shooting them in the fall time is they've had all summer to be eating. They've been foraging, gaining up that fat storage. And you can get a very substantial amount off of a bear in the fall. Rendering that down into tallow and lard is a great way to further utilize that. I think I talked about it, the process of that with the moose fat.
Right.
It's the exact same process with bear fat. You just take all the meat off of it if you can. You maybe cube it up a little bit. They say the smaller pieces you can get it into, the better, because then it melts better.
Interesting.
You can use lower heat. You basically just melt it. You don't cook it. You melt it. Very, very low heat. And you just let it cook off all those impurities and anything else in there. And what you're left with is just this pure white.
I've heard with
amazing
bear grease. Bear grease or lard in particular is actually yellowish.
Can be, and actually moose can be too.
An amber color.
Yeah. The moose tallow I have on my shelf right now is more. It's a darker color. It's not a pure white. But there's tons of uses for that. I'm sure we'll be bringing out articles and things like that as far as what you can use it for. But just around the house for if it's especially for black bear, you'll look at a lot of old Pioneer recipes and things like that. They'll use it for like making pie crust and stuff like that for cooking. Using it in a cast iron skillet to, kind of as your base instead of using butter or anything like that. People using it for like all kinds of stuff, from like leather treatment and things like that. It's a great thing to harvest off these bears. Yeah. So those are all really great reasons to be chasing these things through the woods. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll talk about where to find them.
All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to StealthyHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.
All right, so we've covered a bit about the times to chase them. What time is the most advantageous to be out there looking for them? We've covered why you'd want to chase them.
Yep.
But how about where they're going to be during that fall time of year? They're out there looking for food.
Yep.
They're out there trying to build their fat stores up.
Right.
They're desperate to get the last bit of nutrients before they go to sleep. What I have found in my experience, and this might vary depending on where you're at in the state, or which part of the interior you're in, I should say, because not all of the interior is mountainous area.
A lot of it's not.
But what I have found is the best place to find them is higher up terrain.
Yep.
Whether that's just generally higher up, like just the entire, area is a higher elevation,
right,
or getting up into those mountain ranges and where you have some visibility, you have, a lot of more open country. In my experience, I've seen a lot more in that kind of area during the fall season.
Right.
I've heard tales of people seeing them in still in the low swampy kind of moose country areas during the later part of the year, but not really in a hunting kind of, more of a passing view kind of situation there.
And I think a lot more of that has to do with the fact that it's just harder to spot and stalk bears when they're in the trees. When they're which is what most of the low country is.
Yeah. Even if they're not big trees, still
right,
thick.
or even a lot of low country, if it's just goalies and and some low brush, it doesn't take a lot to hide a bear.
Exactly.
A moose can stand, you can see the moose, but a bear could be standing next to it and you wouldn't see the bear.
Right. Yeah.
Except for the fact that the moose would be running
until the bear stands up. Yeah.
right. Stands up and bites it in the neck, like in that video.
Oh yeah. But yeah, so getting up in a little bit of elevation is definitely going to be preferable. They tend to den up higher up anyways.
Right.
And so the later in the year you get, the better chance you'll see of them kind of lingering around in those higher areas. And that's where a lot of the food that they're chasing is going to be.
Yeah.
Unless they're just in these flat parts of the interior where there's no real mountainous caribou or anything like that. But speaking of which, one good place to find them is if you know that there's a good density of ungulates in the area. You don't want to be going out to just any old place, but if you know where, let's say there's a caribou herd that hangs out, or there's a bunch of moose that you've seen, maybe you were in there moose hunting earlier in the year, saw a ton of bear sign, but didn't see any in the early part of moose season. You go back out there later in the year, and if it's an area that you can see for a ways out, those bears are going to be moving around. They're looking for taking down those cows, those calves, those easier targets, and they'll be a lot easier to spot. Later in the year. But anything really, when you start pushing up into those mountainous regions, and I'm not talking like sheep country. They do go up there. Don't get me wrong.
They can, yeah.
But I'm just talking about like where you would normally see like caribou hanging out and stuff like that. That's where they're going to be. The other thing about those kinds of open terrains is a lot more berry patches.
I was going to say,
there's a lot more of the cranberry growth, blueberry growth, things like that grow in those more open swaths of territory.
Real interesting way. I was going to talk about how blueberries in this time of year, but you just kind of ruined that.
No,
so
go for it.
Well, I was going to say that this, last few weeks, a little earlier, because depending, blueberries that we like to eat are usually best picked before freeze.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Bears are they're eating them at that point, but they eat a lot of them after they've fallen off the bushes. Even they just suck them down. Right?
Oh, dude, it's amazing to watch them do it too. They go along the ground and just woof them up.
But what I was going to say is my wife's been out picking blueberries, and she's not the only one interested in blueberries. Right?
Yeah.
Like in fact, while they were out an area near our house looking for, I don't know if they were even picking blueberries. They were just an area they knew where there were some, and they were out there walking. They found some bear scat.
Oh, really?
Right,
Yeah.
which is
fairly normal in a berry patch,
yeah,
I'd say.
it is. It was very near the house, which was,
Oh, was it? Okay.
And I live a fairly populous area. You know, I'm up against some wilderness, but that was really, I thought it was really cool. And
yeah, well, they don't live far out of town. I mean, you can go not very far out and find bears.
Yeah.
You know, and that might be one of those areas where, you know, they kind of might stick a little bit to lower lands later in the year, but it's amazing when you look at some of the data like Fish and Game has on collared bears and stuff like that, like how far they actually will travel and stuff.
I will say I've had on 2 different baits in the spring, right, different time of year, but I had 2 baits that were, as a crow flies, like 5 miles. Now we're talking hills, river, creeks in between. Not a huge river, but decent sized river. You know, can't get across it with a wheeler most of the year.
Yep.
High banks, both sides, most of the way. And I had a sow and 3 cubs on one bait, 3 little cubs, like first year, you know, got the cute little videos of them standing and playing with each other and all that. One of them had a white ring around its neck, and like,
nice.
I want that one when it grows up, right? If the white ring's still there,
right?
But grizzly bear sow with 3 cubs, and I can't remember what the exact amount of time was. I think it was like 4 hours, 5 miles. She had those 3 cubs at my other bait.
No kidding.
I believe it was 4 hours. Now I might still have all those pictures. I don't know if I have all that data and everything anymore, like I did then. But even if it was 8 hours,
right? That's through brushy country, all those terrain features,
hills, swamp, river, like that. To me, like, I feel like I would be pressed to walk that 5 miles in that amount of time through that terrain.
Yeah.
I want to say I think I could. but you know, it wouldn't be easy.
Yeah.
Right. Anyhow, and that I was very impressed by that. And you know, and if a sow with 3 cubs can do that,
oh, a boar could do it.
Eat out one of my baits and run to another one, right? And you know, and in the same idea, there's a area that I've bear baited, and then I'll go back and moose hunt the same area. And what's really interesting is in the spring, it's full of bears. There's also a lot of moose in there in the spring, but it's full of bears. I mean, I'll have 10 bears on a bait, easy. And
10 different bears.
10 different grizzly bears, 10 different adult bears.
Yeah.
Right. And then come moose season in the fall, there might be one that you see. Maybe there's hardly any sign. There's not tracks everywhere. Like in the springtime, you can run down one of the trails in the area and you're going to find bear tracks. You're going to find bear scat. If you look a little bit, it's there. And there's, you know, usually multiple bear baits in that area, and they're just there. They're thick. But you don't find them in the fall. And I believe that is because they moved to the high country, which isn't too far away in there. It doesn't take them very long to get up there. And I think there's probably a lot more. Maybe there's some caribou, but obviously, you know, blueberries and stuff like that. And they're moving towards their dens.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, they're chasing the food. You know, wherever the highest density of food is, that's where they're going to be. And typically speaking, for that time of year of ease of access, you know, it doesn't get much easier than berries. And you know, kind of as we said in the beginning of the show, they're going to be a lot less cautious about staying in the brush, in the shade. It's cooler outside. They're not getting beaten down by the sun. They're more worried about getting the food than they are about staying hidden, you know. Bears can be very secluded animals that can try to, you know, be very sneaky in the way that they move and try to stay out of sight and just be very you could almost say non-confrontational. Yeah. They just want to kind of go along their way. In the springtime, that all kind of goes out the window. They're just looking for food. Another one specifically for grizzlies, though, is ground squirrel burrows. So if you're in an area where you're noticing a bunch of ground squirrels, typically speaking, you'll notice a lot of holes dug in the ground too. And they'll go through there, and those long white claws, you know, they're perfect shovels. They're flipping rocks, and they're digging through those burrows, and they're trying to see what they can get. If that's the only thing they have available to them, they'll be, you know, digging for all kinds of other low vegetation and stuff like that, marmots and other stuff. So if you find an area like that, it's a good spot to keep an eye on, keep a look. But, realistically, it's going to be a game of patience and a little bit of luck and a little bit more patience.
I think patience
and then,
is a really big one.
Yeah, because what you want to do is you don't want to be running around being that noise and that pressure we talked about earlier. But because they're so active during that time of year, if you're positioning yourself in an advantageous spot to be able to see a large swath of territory,
right,
a large area, and there's a high probability something's going to walk through there.
Yeah.
Now, is it going to be a boar? Is it going to be a sow with cubs? Who knows? That's just playing the game. But plan on glassing a lot if you're looking for fall bears of any kind, whether that's black or grizzlies.
Well, and with bears, it's patience to a point. Also, because where with moose, there's a lot of moose in an area. It's usually best to hunt that spot and keep hunting that spot until it happens. Bears is a little different. If you don't see bears and you don't see a bear sign, guess what that means?
Yep.
It's not bears.
Yep.
So you move to the next valley, you move to the next hillside, whatever it is. So, you might spend a day, maybe two, depending on how much time you have. If you only have a weekend, well, then that's where you're probably spending your weekend.
Right.
But you get up to a high location or wherever you need to glass, I think there's most likely to be bears. And you glass all day long. And if you don't see anything, one day may not be enough. 2 days, you don't see anything, I would move on.
Right, yeah.
And a lot of guys will go in and hunt one spot for a week.
Yeah.
And just be like, man, there's no bears in here. But there's another guy over the hill hunting that spot. And guess what?
Yeah.
He's looking at multiple bears because for whatever reason, the bears like that valley better.
Yeah.
Better food or better denning territory or whatever it is. Right. But there's a lot of patience, but to a point, and then you move on.
You don't want, and that's a very good point. You don't want to be patient to a fault.
Right.
Yeah. You don't want to wait yourself out of a hunt.
Right.
Which, I mean, and kind of like you said with moose, I mean, I would equate that for moose as well. I mean, we talked about, not jumping around too much, but kind of the same thing. I mean, if you've hunted an area for, several days on end, and just not seen anything realistic to shoot, whether you're in a Spike Fork 50 area and there just doesn't seem to be a big boy around, or you just haven't seen any bulls at all. It's not a bad idea to at least check out the neighboring valley and see if that's where they're hanging out. But especially with bears, because it is kind of weird how they'll, and this is part of going into the science of it all, understanding the food that they're after during that time of year, and understanding the kind of area they want to den in, and understanding the elevations they're going to be at. It can be absolutely a difference of just you're on the wrong side of the valley.
Right.
You just need to go one ridge over or something like that. There's just more of, whatever the food and the nutrients they're looking for that time of year.
Right. I 1 year going out in an area that I moose hunting was looking for bears because I've seen bear sign in the area. I went in there twice, end of September, beginning of October, like I've talked about doing. And maybe more towards the middle end of October too. I don't remember exactly everything we did that year. I busted a tie rod on my wheeler, and on the last trip we did, that was a long trip, that one. But
I think you told that story.
I did tell that story, so I'm not going into it now. But before that, we'd gone in, and I believe it was the end of September, and we get in there and we camped for the night. And then we got up in the morning, and there was snow on the ground. And I don't think there was when we went in, but there was the next day.
Okay.
And it was an interesting thing because another thing to think about with a lot of these mountainous areas is the weather in the fall just can change in a matter of seconds, in a matter of minutes. And, you can go from being socked in to sunny, or from being sunny to socked in, which can really be dangerous when you get up in the mountain, especially if you're riding on a wheeler and you don't have a trail and you just find your way up, finding your way down when it's socked in.
Right.
I've almost died doing that. All right.
No problem. I don't doubt it.
But that's another topic for another time. But it snowed that morning. We get out, we're riding some flat, some gravel areas, and we get over to the trail, and we just set up bear tracks right down the trail. I mean, we're just starting hunting. It feels awesome. Like, boom, bear tracks, fresh bear tracks, right? Snowed last night. We were excited. So we kind of just we're looking to get up higher to look, and
Mhm.
we get up higher, and we do see one bear, but we saw him briefly as he was running over a ridge. We saw a wolf or two. We saw a ton of caribou. We saw a ton of moose. It was amazing. Like you said about hunting pressure.
You're right. Yeah.
I just want to invite you guys, go into an area that you hunt where you see decent amount of game that you feel
Mhm.
like. Go in there a week or two after when there's nobody else in there.
Right.
Just spend a few days.
Uh-huh.
Get up in the high country and glass. You'll be blown away by the amount of game that you'll see, the number of species, and the amount of them that you're going to see, especially if you look in glass, right? You know, we saw tons of caribou, tons of moose, wolves, bear, which is pretty much everything for that area.
Yeah.
I don't know if we saw any sheep that trip. There are sheep in there too, but anyhow, it was just incredible to see that much game. But the point about it all that was this: it was a little early, and the bears were still low.
Yeah.
You know, and what's a really perfect time is when there's snow, but they're up high, so they stand out against the snow, right? And actually, later that day, the snow burned off by the time we even saw that bear. But that's just something to really, really think about, and something also where going in the same place, if there's bears in there year after year, learning it. Dalton talked about taking multiple trips just to figure out an area before you're ready to hunt it. And he talked about that, I think, around this time, maybe last year.
Yeah.
But I think that's a big thing.
It is. Yeah. Well, and just to that point with the activity levels and the weather and everything like that. I've had it to where, you know, with caribou hunting, you know, when the caribou hunts go in the last several years, with the 40-mile herd and other herds, hunting has gone for caribou into the last parts of September before they ever close it down. Often just hitting the end of the season rather than hitting the quotas.
Right.
And you see a lot more posts. You see a lot more stories about people taking grizzly bears during that later part of September, towards the end of that caribou hunt. And you go into those exact same areas. I've done this where in late August, say, you go in there, the caribou might be there. You're hunting the same area. You might be seeing some sign, but there's just not the density that there is before. So understanding the weather of where you're going to go and the all of the different features. There's so much science that goes into it. That's one thing that I love about hunting in general is you can wing it and you can just go out in the woods and kind of run with I'm where the animals live, so maybe I'll see one. Or you can really dive in and figure out exactly what they're looking for, exactly where they're going to be, and really up your chances of success.
Even then, to a certain sense, what's great about hunting is you're still winging it.
Oh yeah, I mean,
you got to rely on your tie rods. I mean, come on.
Well, and you never learn everything,
right?
You know, the important thing, the mentality I try to keep is every hunt is a lesson. That includes successful hunts. Right. Even if I go out and I have a target in mind, and let's say I'm chasing moose, I go out there and I get a moose and I drag it home. I still figured out something maybe I want to do different next time, or something. Okay, I tried this time and it worked, and you know I got a moose in a position that I hadn't been able to before, or a bear or something like that. It's always a learning process, and that's part of what makes it so fun. One thing we'll touch on real quick before wrapping up is just the appropriate firearm selection for bear specifically in the spring or in the fall.
And maybe since it's you and me, we can keep this discussion short.
Well, I'm gonna say a comment that's seen pretty often around the comment sections on social media and whatnot, but a lot of it has to do with the gun you're most comfortable shooting.
You're right.
In a hunting situation, if you're in the position to take a controlled shot in an area where you know your ranges and everything like that, I mean, you'll hear mixed stories about performance on bears, and that's just bear hunting. Right. Bears are individuals, each one. Some will go down immediately. Others will go down very slowly. You know, I've heard everything from guys going out with a 280 Ackley and dropping a bear lights out, one shot, completely just falling on its legs. I've also heard of people taking a 300 Win Mag out there and blowing through both shoulders of a bear, and it's still running 100 yards, and acting almost like it didn't even get hit.
Well, it's one of the reasons you shouldn't shoot it in the shoulder.
Right. But and so really it's about what you're comfortable with. But if I'm chasing bears, for me personally, I'm bringing my 338. And that's just kind of my
it's
deal.
kind of your ideal rifle for that kind of hunt right now, isn't it?
It is. And I'm kind of a medium bore guy. I like to stay in that range of, I'm hunting big animals in Alaska. That's just what I'm comfortable with. And I can handle it. The recoil doesn't bother me. I like the range I have. I like the performance I have. I like the displacement that those bullets offer in that caliber. But at the end of the day, they are a tough animal, but they're just an animal. Now you want to make sure you have enough gun to protect yourself if you end up in an encounter.
Right.
And that is a very real thing that can happen, especially if you end up getting real close. I mean, yeah, you can see one from 1,000 yards or a mile away and make a stalk on it and be in a very controlled situation there. But you also can be in a situation where you're 40 yards away from it, even in wide open country. Right. And so you want to make sure that in the event that something happens, you've got enough gun to take care of the situation.
Right.
So,
yeah, I'll say for the most part, if I'm in that kind of a hunt, unless I'm trying to challenge myself to a shorter range, then I'm probably going to have my 300 short mag.
Right.
I don't have anything bigger bore than that than the 4570 right now. And the 4570 is not a longer range rifle.
Right.
If I wanted to do, I've seen some guys buying like the 250 hammers and drilling them out and maybe getting them down to like 200 grains.
Really?
And, trying to push super hot loads, fast loads out of that short barrel. And I think they're doing it and, and that might work great, good for them. But I've got a 300 short mag with 160 grain HHTs that fly phenomenal.
Yeah.
I'm well over 3,000 feet per second with a 168 grain bullet. And anything under 400 yards is going to put a smack.
Oh, yeah.
Really good smack, I get minimum expansion at 800. Hopefully I never have to make that shot. But, for what it is and for what I'm going to be doing with it, right? I don't have any problem at all with that.
Yeah.
And if there's two of us on the hunt and somebody else doesn't have their own rifle necessarily, and maybe I have somebody coming along with me, or maybe it would be you and me, right? You carry your 338 and maybe I'll carry my 4570.
Yeah.
Right. Or maybe I'm carrying my 300 short mag and you're carrying your 4570 maybe, but
right. Yeah.
Depending on that kind of situation, having that primary and backup.
That is
right.
Yeah.
And then if you do end up 100 yards or 40 yards from a bear, you can be like, oh, well, hand me the 4570, right?
Right. Exactly.
Let's take this thing out at close range.
Yep. Yeah, that's huge. When you're partner hunting like that, you have a lot more possibilities there. And I'll just fall back to the same thing I've said several times on the show, which is just shoot the biggest thing you're comfortable shooting. For me, I like my 375. I have a 375 Ruger that I really enjoy shooting. It's very accurate and it's got a lot of power, a lot of knockdown power, but it doesn't give me the ranges that I would like. And that's kind of where I landed on the 338.
Right.
And for you, your 300 short mag, that'll work phenomenally. You might, when you're going smaller and smaller, if somebody's going into the 7 mil range or, you do have to be more selective on your shot. You want to really make sure you're getting a good placement on that. But don't feel like if all you have is a 300 Win Mag or all you have is a 7 mil Rem Mag or all you have is a 30-06. Realistically, really don't feel like you can't go on a hunt for a grizzly just because you don't have like a super high caliber, a big bore or a Magnum or anything like that. We talked Frank Glasser on the show a bunch of times, the Alaska Wolfman. I think he killed a dozen of them in a week with a 30-06.
30-06 is kind of like the old all Alaskan.
It really is. Yeah.
And a lot of guys still, for most guys who aren't like who are the moose or caribou hunters we talked about earlier, they're either carrying a 30-06 or 300 Win Mag. That's pretty standard.
Yeah.
There's sure everybody's got something else, but for the most part, that's the majority of the guns up here.
I would say 300 Win Mag's probably taking the cake as the Alaskan favorite round
Maybe
right
now.
These days in modern times.
But especially a lot of older guys are going to run the 30-06.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
That's what I carried, and I've killed caribou.
Yep.
Killed quite a few caribou with that.
I mean, I know people that have hunted grizzlies with 270s.
And there's nothing wrong with the 30-06, right?
Right.
Honestly, out to at least 200 yards on a grizzly bear 30-06 would be awesome all day long.
Absolutely. And you might want to be a little more selective with your bullet type. Maybe shooting a heavier bullet out of it and re-zeroing for that heavier bullet. Or, just making sure you've got something that's very solid and is going to penetrate properly, is going to get through, that bear the way you want it to.
Right.
But, yeah, I'm curious if this was a different direction than people thought it would go. But really, I mean, there's no limiting factor as long as you're not shooting, something super small that you wouldn't want to shoot even a caribou with.
I wouldn't want to go smaller than a 270 in diameter.
Yeah.
Personally.
If you ask me my personal low, I would say like a 7 mil.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah. I know it can be done with a 270, but just my personal comfort level.
I think a 270 would be okay.
Yes.
Especially for interior grizzly. We are not recommending that for coastal brown bears.
Right. Yeah.
I'm sure there's guys that do it. There's guys that do it with a 308. Which is a bigger bullet, but it's a lot slower. Right. And honestly, a 308, while it's slow, if you keep yourself within your limiting ranges, I heard a story the other day. A guy was charged by a brown bear it was a grizzly while moose hunting.
Interior.
Yeah. And I believe he had his 44 mag.
Okay.
And he pulled it out and put 2-3 shots in the bear and killed it. And 308 was on his back. That's what he was moose hunting with, was a 308. So he then got the 308 off because the 308 was still better than the 44 mag.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And he had killed the bear and made some great shots on it with the 44 mag. And he was able to claim it because it was the right season and everything. It worked out good. He didn't have to DLP.
Yeah.
But anyhow.
Yeah. Well, and that is the last thing I think we should cover is understanding if you're non-res, you do have to be guided.
Yes.
For even interior grizzlies. That's not just a coastal thing.
Right.
That's any grizzly or brown bear in the state. Now, black bear, you can chase.
Yeah.
You can come up here and chase black bear all you want.
Everything we've talked about today covers grizzly and black bear.
Yeah.
Honestly, in black bear, I'd be willing to go down to that 6.5.
Yeah, you got a little bit more leniency with black bears.
Right. They're a little bit softer target, mostly because their response isn't going to necessarily be what the grizzly bears is.
Right.
And they're a little smaller.
They're a little smaller. Yeah. They're a little bit more. They're not as. I'm not going to say they're not dangerous, but compared to a grizzly bear,
right?
You really want to make sure you put that thing down. And that's where the proper shot placement, the right bullet choice, making sure you're comfortable with your rifle and your range, keeping within your ethical ranges. All of that is so super important. Right. So, but all right, guys, well, we're going to wrap this one up for Monday, and we'll be back Thursday. Mo talked about we're going to bring you guys an episode. I think we're going to talk about some mapping, some trail riding, all that good stuff. So keep an ear out for that. Make sure if you have any questions about what we talked about today, give us a shout at our social medias. If you search at The Northern Hunter on either Facebook or Instagram, you'll get us there. If you go to the website, we've got a nice contact us button there. And if you like what we're doing and you'd like to support us, the easiest way is obviously to subscribe to the show, share it with your friends, give us a rating. That really helps us reach more people and grow. But we also have a nice shop page with some merch. Hats, hoodies, and t-shirts now. More designs always coming. And the partners page, if you shop from any of our partners, that helps them out a lot, and that really helps us out too. Hopefully you guys are having a good moose season. Get out there and get after some bears. And until Tuesday or Thursday, get out there, get after it. Good luck. We'll see you there.
All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to STEALTHYHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.